Welcome to Side Notes. I'm here with the Liberal Member of Parliament, Jim Karygiannis. Jim, your family came over to Canada from Greece in 1966. Prior to you talking about what you saw when you first came over to Canada, just before we get this interview, you were talking about when you were 5 years old and you went over to Dachau and your father took you over.
First of all, allow me to say thank you for coming to interview me. Life in Canada has certainly been, I think we're very fortunate to live in this country. I've been here almost, coming up soon to 50-year anniversary. Father came when he was young. He came with, a few bucks in his pocket and a suitcase of dreams. He materialized most of his dreams. Suitcase and a few dollars in his pocket became a little bit more than just a few dollars in his pocket. He tried his luck in Germany. He went to Germany in 1959-60, and I, as a 4-year-old, went there. We lived in Munich for about a year, and then we went back to Greece. I had visited some interesting places in Munich. I still even remember the Oktoberfest in Munich back in late 59, early 60s. My dad took me to Dachau to see what was happening, and then Dachau is not what it is today. The place was still standing. Today you only have the foundations in one barrack. And last April, when I was in Paris, I decided to drive to Munich and to revisit. And the memories came back, and I've seen the horrific things that a man can do to another man, and we still haven't learned. 80 years later, and we still at it, and we still, to this very day, have atrocities done by men unto men, mankind unto mankind, and we got to change that.
One example is we're talking the 1990s in Bosnia, Herzegovina, when we actually had Canadian soldiers that went over there. I had some veteran friends, and they're talking about some of the stories that they went through, and it really affected a lot of people. Have any veterans, fellow veterans, shared any stories with you about Bosnia?
It's interesting because on the same trip, when I went to Paris, we drove from Greece to Paris along the Adriatic coast and back down. And there were checkpoints along. Customs places that were set up after the war, and these the custom houses anymore do not exist because Bosnia, Herzegovina, Montenegro, Croatia, they're trying to get into the EU, so those borders have to be taken down. So these people fought a war in order to separate, and now they want to be united under the EU. Going back to your question about the veterans, I've spoken to many veterans that have seen action in Bosnia-Herzegovina as well as in Croatia, and a lot of them are being affected, and a lot of them are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder as well as other disorders after the war, and it has affected them greatly, and the grave situation that existed over there, the atrocities between, again, mankind to mankind because of religion, and the hatred that goes back to 600-700 years. We went into the mist trying to provide safety for both sides, and we ended up, I guess, a lot of our men and women that were there ended up having the brunt when they came back home, and having seen the atrocities, they still are affected by it.
And another thing you're talking about, you've been involved with politics since 1988. You actually raised the issue about Armenia and the genocide that happened there from 1915 to 1923, when over, I think, 1.5 million Armenians were killed by Turkish.
Armenians were killed. Pontian Greeks were killed. So you had two genocides that were happening at the same time. You had the Armenians, and then you had the Pontian Greeks. In 1922, September the 9th to September the 12th, you had the burning of Smyrna, or what's today called Izmir, and there was a whole bunch of people that were trying to get on boats to get out of Izmir. I've just seen a documentary lately that has again brought the unkindness of humanity, of humans against humans, and we just never learn. When we were debating the Armenian genocide, in the House of Commons, one of the things that I said is that in 1939, August, when Hitler was getting ready for the final solution against the Jewish population of Europe, and just before the Holocaust, and he says, "Who remembers the Armenian genocide?" Well, guess what? I still remember the Armenian genocide. I still remember what happened in the Holocaust. I mean, seeing all these documentaries and speaking to people, even Darfur, even Rwanda, and even happens today. I mean, if you go to the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and you speak to the people there, that is happening. It's happening as we right now doing the interview in South Sudan. You got two fractions going at each other, killing each other, and I don't understand why people are fighting. I don't understand if it's over religion, it's over land, or it's over money. It seems to be a combination of all. But the victims, the men and women, the innocent bystanders that get killed, that hurts the most.
Well, if you even look at Canadian history, you got what happened to the First Nation, the residential schools, what happened to Ukrainian immigrants forcibly interned, I think 1914 and 1920, Japanese internment, World War II, German internment, Italian internment, Chinese head tax. One thing that I'm a really big supporter of is that I would love to see the day when all the atrocities that happened throughout history, throughout our times and even before, if they could be put in a book and taught to the children, because I believe our youth are the future, and they're the ones who are going to inherit a better world.
It's interesting that you say this. I have a friend of mine, which is the local trustee, and he's involved with the schools. And what is happening right now with the Toronto District School Board is they're teaching about the Ukrainian Holodomor. They're teaching about the Armenian genocide. They're teaching about the Holocaust. And these are subjects that children around now being taught. Now, granted that in Canada we have our fair share of mishaps and difficulties. As you mentioned, some of them have been recognized. It was not only those, but we also had the Gatamagata Maru, the Sikhs when they were coming over in Vancouver. In order to come to Canada in the early 1900s, you had to get passage from your country straight to Canada, a ship passage. And if there was no passage that came, like, say, from Hong Kong directly to Canada, well, you couldn't immigrate to Canada. So a bunch of enterprising Sikhs got a ship, was called the Gatamagata Maru. They got it into the Calcutta, gone on, and straight passage to Canada. And when they arrived in Vancouver, it was like the Sikhs are invading us. And after 60, 70 days and a lot of back and forth, we forced that ship to go back to Calcutta. And when they arrived in Calcutta, the Indians, the Punjabis that were on the ship, almost to the person were interned or butchered. Then we had the head tax. So our history is also laced with difficulties, and these difficulties, some of them we have acknowledged, some of them we have addressed and redressed. But again, we as a nation have a lot of responsibility in this world.
The length that you've been involved with federal politics, 1988, as I mentioned earlier, you've seen an awful lot throughout the time you've been involved with the Chrétien government, the Paul Martin government, and in the current government you're involved, the current opposition, and actually not opposition, but you're Third party. I've actually found that kind of strange to say that, because I remember the Liberals used to be an extremely powerful party, but with Trudeau.
Times come, they come and they change, and hopefully we'll be in government one more time. But I have had the historical. I've sent people into battle in the first Gulf War. I was part and parcel of the government that sent people into battle or harm's way, or ordered Canadian forces to go over into Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then we went into Afghanistan. So I feel responsible for having sent men and women in harm's way 3 or 4 theaters. And when I hear the horrific things that have happened to them along the way, people 30 years old and 35 years old and 40 years old that were in Afghanistan, that were killed, that have come back with post-traumatic stress disorder, that have come back with missing limbs, that has me in a difficult situation, not only personally, having known that it was part and parcel that we actually were part of the government that sent them over there, but also responsible that we have to look after them. And right now, this current government is, under the new Veterans Charter, is failing them completely.
Well, you take a look at United States. As of November of this year, CNN, I was just looking at this morning, there was an article written in November, 22 veterans a day are committing suicide in the United States. I know recently we had about 4 veterans.
Five.
5 veterans.
Five. We had 4 military, and 1 veteran, and another military that just committed suicide. So we had 5 military, 5 in the military, plus 1 veteran. 6, and we had a couple of attempted suicides. So the 4 that got a lot of play in the media, there was a 5th veteran that in Sydney that was a volunteer firefighter, and then we had a young man last Saturday or the Saturday before that committed suicide out in Victoria, BC.
I know with the situation with the veterans, I mean, I've talked to an awful lot of fellow veterans. We basically have the through the internet. And the question I have to ask, I mean, I feel like this is sort of a ticking time bomb, because there's so many veterans out there that are suffering through PTSD, not only from Afghanistan, but we're talking the peacekeeping era that I come from. What the question I have is, what is the government going to do in order to correct this problem, in order to provide the health? Because there's still a stigmatism in place that if someone goes for help, I come from the era myself where you're supposed to suck it up.
If you're in the army and you go looking for help, you get drummed out.
Yeah. Well, even as a veteran, you get laughed at within the community, and you get ostracized.
Lately, we have seen a lot of the veterans that have service dogs, even military personnel. Just recently, there was a military personnel that had a service dog in the Maritimes, and he came up to court-martial, and it was until the intervention of people, and especially media, that they were saying, okay, we're going to look into it. I have 2 volunteer service individuals, veterans, that are volunteering in my office as staff members, and they have service dogs, and there's one is called Toby, and the other one's called Kenya. So we were out to lunch when I first met them, and Kenya, which is Dan Drapeau's service dog, she came over and started licking my paw, and I look at Dan and I go, what's going on? He says to me, take your pills, stupid. And I was like, what? He says, you're diabetic, aren't you? I go, yeah. He says, you're diabetes is high, take your pills. So Kenya, which was a service dog for Dan, felt that I needed my pills, and she came over and started licking my paw. So I after then I became a believer in these service dogs. These service dogs sense what you need, and they automatically respond. And if you are in a conversation and you're starting to get tense, you will see the service dogs jump all over you and try to focus on me and get your thought away. So we have military personnel at this very moment that need help and assistance, and they're going into military bases, especially JPSU, and they're saying, look, we need help. And you have doctors that are psychologists and psychiatrists that are actually leaving the military. There were 4 of them that resigned en masse in Edmonton just recently because they couldn't deal with the matter. I mean, there's not enough resources in order for us to look after our military. So we need to put the resources in, not only to the military, but to our veterans. And we need to find ways in order for them not to be ostracized, and we need to find ways in order for them to be part of our community.
Yeah, I know that you actually had a couple veterans come to Ottawa. There was one, Kate and Kevin, that they were doing that walk across from Nova Scotia to
Kevin
Ottawa.
Berry
Kate
and Kate McEachran.
And Kate actually did it right from Nova Scotia right over to Ottawa. It's amazing. I think it was over 1,700 kilometers that she walked.
It was like 1,690 whatever. And Kate has come back and she's done another press conference with us. And when she was walking last year, in 2012, even at that point in time, the Minister of National Defense, Peter MacKay, went and walked with her. And this year, when she wanted to do it again, they said, no, you can't do it. And she was drummed out, and she says, the hell with you, and I'm getting out. There's stories like that from a lot of vets. Medrick Cousineau walked in order to to provide evidence of what's happening with the service dogs. Mike Cole has driven across Canada. He used to be he used to fly Hercules, and he used to supply Senator Dallaire when he was in Rwanda. He used to fly people into Germany. He used to fly people into Cyprus, into Afghanistan, and he, when he wanted to do something to raise awareness what's happening in the Third War, and raise some money for kids that were deprived, he was drummed out of the military. So this is not a unique situation. You got one or two individuals that are actually drummed out. There's a lot of people that are drummed out as soon as they say, I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm suffering for something. The Army doesn't want you. If you're young and you're able, then we can control you and kick you around, that's fine. But as soon as you get a little bit older, and if you're suffering from some illnesses, they just want you out, they want you gone.
Yeah, I saw that in 1995. I served myself from 86 to 95, and as I was getting out, I was just noticing that at that time it was like, here's a shot of rum and coke, now leave. I'm noticing there is some programs nowadays that are in place, but then there was nothing in place. So they've taken steps through Paul Martin and Harper together that they've been able to put at least a couple steps, and I'm hoping in time that they continue with the process, and and all parties work together.
Those steps cannot be piecemeal. Those steps have to be progressive, and they have to be forward thinking, and we can't use the vets anymore for photo ops. Many a times we say, wear your medals, come to our events and all that stuff, and we take photo ops and we put them in our householders. One of the things that I'm refusing to do as the Veterans Affairs critic for the Liberal Party is use vets as photo ops. If a vet takes a picture and they send it to me, I always ask permission in order to post it and put it out. I have adamantly just do not want to use photo ops of the vets. Vets with their medals, and when they get dressed, and they look nice and they make good photo ops. But I will not use these photo ops as an opportunity to get votes, and I will not promote that.
So what other programs do you feel should be put in place that we're not really focusing on at this moment?
In 2006, we unanimously voted for the new Veterans Charter. The new Veterans Charter was supposed to be a living charter. One of the great faults of the new Veterans Charter that I'm hearing is that if you get hurt, you get a lump sum. Like in your case, until 95, you will be able to get a military pension. If you were in the military right now and people were saying, okay, you have to go out, you get a lump sum. That lump sum, the most you can get, if you're missing hands and arms and all that stuff, is about $300,000, $290,000, $300,000. That's not enough in order for you to live a comfortable remaining life. You're in your 40s, you get that. If you were getting $40,000 a year as a corporal, that's 10 years. And a lot of the people take that money and they invest it. If they invest it wisely, they're okay. If they invest it or they blow it, well, it's gone. I know a lot of veterans have means and ways of thinking about it. But again, we need to relook at the lump sum.
Go back to monthly payments. And
definitely one issue. But however, there's a lot of good things in the NVC that we have to keep. And those things are programs for the vets. When you go in the Army, you're a square peg. And the Army chisels you and makes you into a round peg, and they put you into a round hole. In the Army, it's yes sir, no sir. And if you're told from 9:01 to do something until 8:59 the next morning, you do it. It's a 24-hour commitment. It is not like 9 to 5. It's not like I will not do the job because it's painful or it's harmful.
24, yeah.
You're told to do something, that's it. You're told to go out there and fight, and you will go out and fight. And so the situation that the Army does versus the civilian world is different. So you leave the Army, and you're this chiseled down round peg, and we take you out from, and then all of a sudden you want to become square again. If I can, just put it as a metaphor. Now we have to help you fill in, what we had chiseled out. So a lot of the military and a lot of veterans feel comfortable in a military situation, and when they come into civilian life, it's like, I'm lost. where am I? What am I
I,
doing?
I've experienced that myself, and that's why I like that some of the programs that are offered, the new programs that are offered.
But
It's great to see.
we need to have money in order to make those programs work.
I agree with you.
Unfortunately, the money is not all there. It's nice to talk about it. There's new legislation on the table right now, which is Bill C-11, that says the veterans are going to get in front of the line when it comes to federal department jobs or to federal government jobs. Well, we haven't hired anybody new in the federal government for a number of years. Matter of fact, we're closing VAC centers. This is the Veteran Affairs centers that are supposed to be looking after you. We're closing 9, and that would leave close to 27,688 veterans out in the cold. The minister then changed around and says, no, we're not going to close them all. We're going to leave one person behind in those areas that we're closing. So that brings it down to 17,000 veterans out in the cold. You live in Kelowna. We closed the center that had 10 or 11 service managers. All of a sudden, you have one service manager. That service manager is responsible for 40 people. 50 people call him, boom. This service manager is just locked in. And the minister says, go on the web or use the, use other means to get in touch with us. You're not 90 years old. You don't know what the web is. You used to know your case officer that you used to work with in the service, in the VAC center, and you used to be able to go in and speak to them, and that's gone anymore. So when we're closing down VAC centers and we're not hiring anybody new, how can we put veterans in front of the line? That's number one. Number two, we talked about taking this square peg, chiseling it in order to fit it in a round hole. All of a sudden you come back out. We need to provide for you funds in order for you to be retrained. We need to provide for you funds in order for you to have the mental stability that is required to get into a job. Unfortunately, that's not there. We pointed out to the minister, and I'm looking forward to be putting an amendment to the law and a motion that actually will bring in for funding. I know the Conservatives will not support it. And we need to make sure that our men and women in the armed forces, when they become the veterans, they not only have the respect that they deserve, they have the programs that they deserve, because being in the military is a career, and when you come out, you're lost, and we need to continue working with you in order to have be a productive and an individual that is there to give, because all the training that you got and all the discipline, you just can't lose that.
I agree with you. Thank you so much for all that you've done for the veteran community. And what last question I have to ask you, what is the one thing that sticks out in your mind? You've been involved in the federal politics in 1988, so you've gone over 2 decades now. What is the one thing?
25 years. There's many memorable moments that I have as a member of parliament. And if I didn't like the job, I would have quit a long time ago. I'm fully pensionable, so serving anymore and as a member of parliament actually does not augment my pension. People that I went to service at the same time with me, here I'm using military terms, service, they're pensioned, and the difference between the pension that they receive and the salary that I take home, if you do the math, is about $500. So I work for $500 monthly, which comes out to peanuts per hour. But I love the job. I love what I'm doing. And one of the things that I always keeps in my mind is that when I was running for a politician, I went to a house and I said to them, I'd like to sign you up to be members of the Liberal Party for you to support me. And it was a story that was told me how Donald MacDonald, and this is going back, late 70s, early 80s, how he helped this family. It was a Greek family and they had 2 boys that came over, how he helped them stay in Canada and become landed immigrants and Canadian citizens. And just the other day, I had a young couple, well, this is going back 1 or 2 days, and they came in, and when my dad passed away, my dad used to have a saying, live, love, laugh. And they took that and they made a picture out of it, and they gave it to me. And that is something which is, just recently, we helped them get his parents over, and to be here for the delivery of the child, and to have these people come and pay respects to what is very important to you and say, you're important to us. I might not be around for many years. I might not make laws that people will remember. I might not change the face of Canada. Other people have done that. Trudeau, Chrétien, Martin. I mean, Harper, in my opinion, is changing into the negative aspect. But to that family that's going to be around for another 40, 50 years, if I was able to change slightly their life for a betterment, for making it better, that's the legacy that I think that I will leave behind. One-on-one and not en masse. If I do good on the portfolio that I'm in right now, I might leave a legacy within the veteran community. And to be accepted by them and to call you Brother Jim and for them to be friendly with you on a first name basis versus no sir, yes sir, I find that incredible, and I thank them on a daily basis. And my commitment to them is that I would work. So the commitment that Borden, our Prime Minister, made in 1917 that says that we're going to look after you when you come, after the Battle of Vimy Ridge, that is the commitment that I want to live by as long as I got this portfolio, which is called Veterans Affairs. Mind you, in the future, I might get other portfolios, and I will certainly work as best as I can in that field. But right now, the veterans are in need. There's a cry for changes, and I'm looking forward to working with them for those positive changes.
Well, I just want to say this in closing. 1995, when I got out of the military, there was an awful lot of resentment towards the military at that time, and anyone that served around that time. At least now that the veterans are getting better recognition, I'm happy to see that. Happy to see individuals like yourself helping the veteran community. That's great to see. Well, thank you so much for your time there, Jim.
Thank you for coming. I wish you all the best. And I know that you're a veteran yourself. There's a lot of things that we need to do and to support our vets, and I'm happy that you're doing this, not only for the other veterans, but for the greater community in Canada to see the work that members of Parliament, veterans, as well as other individuals are doing to make a productive country. We're the best country in the world. We've been ranked that time and time again. Now it's up to us to make sure that we take what we have, especially the multicultural community, the diversity of the multicultural community, and working with them, provide sustainable development for nation building. We've been into Afghanistan, we've been in Croatia, we've been in a lot of places. Why can we not involve these communities in order to help us build better countries, build the legacy of our country throughout the world?
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much again.